Greetings, everybody. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to a brand new series of Stellaris playing the newly released DLC, Overlord. Information about this series and its settings can be found in the description of this video, and I spend approximately the first 10 minutes covering those settings. This series is going to be very slow and in-depth, so it's perfect for new players who need to learn Stellaris and all of its game mechanics. If you'd like to skip the overview, please use YouTube chapters. Let's get started. So, some important things to cover before I start. In terms of mods, I have none. In terms of DLCs, I have all of them. So, primarily I'm going to be focusing on the Overlord DLC, which changes the way the Vassal system works and also adds in some additional new origins. We're going to be doing a fiefdom origin. And I am playing on Cephas 342. So if you're watching this sometime in the future, things may have patched and changed since then. For a new game, I already have everything built out, the Democratic Yoda Commonwealth. But I will show you the details before I start. So in terms of appearance, I mean, come on. It has to be Yoda. Species name and nameless don't really matter. They're not significant. They're cosmetic. As far as traits go, we're intelligent, non-adaptive, sedentary, conformist, and traditional. So a big focus on research and unity. That's kind of the meta. The name and class updates. In here, I will actually turn off my interface so you can see a little bit better. We are going to be a savanna world. I figured that's kind of Yoda's favorite biome, if we're talking about biomes. He likes to bask in the sun, but not too hot. City appearance is mammalian origin. So this is what is new. If you are familiar with Stellaris, you'll know a lot of these options here. There is now Progenitor Hive, Subterranean, Slingshot to the Stars, Teachers of the Shroud, and Imperial Fiefdom. Progenitor Hive is a hive-minded origin. Subterranean is underground, cave dweller. Slingshot to the Stars, you start with a slingshot that allows you to colonize far-flung worlds. Normally I play on really small galaxies, so that's totally not helpful. Teachers of the Shroud is a psychic origin, and then there is Imperial Fiefdom, where you are the vassal of an advanced AI empire, and you get to choose how you specialize at the start of the game. As far as government and ethics, we are fanatically egalitarian and materialist, with civics, beacon of liberty, and technocracy. So we are pushing, again, unity and research. So you can see a common theme.
The blind masses must be led down the path of reason.
Okay, we are the Technocrat. We're the Democratic Yoda Commonwealth. Here's our flag. It looks kind of Yoda-like, I think. Ship appearance is mammalian as well, and the leader is Yoda. But of course, we aren't hive-minded, so the leaders will change over time. Alright, once we're done with this, all of these game details are actually in the details command, so you can look them up post-start. But this is basically what I do. Small galaxy sizes with maximum empires for a vie for territory pretty early on. 2 fallen empires, 2 marauder empires, so there's a lot of strong things out there, with very low habitable worlds, so that there's even more competition for worlds, and very few primitive civilizations. 2300 and 2600 for the mid and end game, and the victory at 2800. I'm only going to be playing on Ensign because of all the role-playing that's going to be going on. And everything else here is basically set as default. And of course, I am on Iron Man, so no save scums can be used. Here on the right, you can see all the DLCs that I'm using. And let's get going. I hope that my random start is good. Another thing that I wanted to mention in this series is I'm going to be playing incredibly slow. I'm going to be explaining everything in painstaking detail. So veterans of Stellaris, hang in there. We'll speed up once I cover the groundwork. But for brand new players, this is going to be a really good opportunity for you to learn a complex game. So this here, I'm not going to read, but it's basically our origin as a fief of an overlord. Right at the start, I usually pan out to figure out where I am in terms of the galactic core. So my overlord is here, this 3-world system, and then they have 2 vassals. They have this vassal and that vassal, and I am a third. I'm actually pretty far flung, which is useful. Now there's some important things to consider as a vassal. Vassals of an overlord aren't allowed to colonize at the same speed as non-vassals, so growing early is paramount but also difficult. Alright, step 2, pick our research. So we have 3 researchers here. One has a spark of genius, which gives bonus to all types of research. One has new worlds, and one has propulsion. My 4th researcher is here, and they are a surveyor. So in terms of research, my physics research I'm going to pick is going to be Zero-G Laboratories. The reason for this is I'm having him increase the amount of research I get from research stations. For the New Worlds researcher here, none of these options are New World options. They're biology and statecraft. So I think I'm going to push statecraft for the Unity. For engineering, there's only coil gun, which is the propulsion research. I ideally would like industry to get more engineering from researchers. So I'm going to ignore the fact that there's coil gun and go nanomechanics instead. As far as the researchers I can recruit, I don't have enough Unity right now to bring in a new researcher. Last patch significantly changed the meta for surveying, where it used to cost energy credits, but now it costs Unity, making it a lot more expensive to hire a whole bunch of leaders early on. Alright, next up, the planet. So here we have a 21 size Savannah world, which is 100% suited habitability, meaning that our happiness can go up to max. Sorry about the double music I just noticed. There's really nothing I need to build right now, so I'm not going to queue up any builds. I'm going to tell my surveyor here, to go survey towards my neighbors. I know that I'm going to be competing with systems with these guys, so I want to annex this stuff if they're good systems as soon as I can. I also want to survey this Savannah world down here as well, because that is going to be colonizable for me, and it's going to be very important for me to colonize early. Now, in terms of resources, we have energy credits, minerals, food, consumer goods, alloys, influence, and unity. The first 5 are materials that you use to build and expand. Influence allows you to annex territories, claim territories of opponents, that kind of thing. And then Unity is allowed to hire leaders and then also expand your traditions, which allows you to specialize what kind of empire you are. Over here we have research, how much research I'm getting. So 28 physics, 28 society, 31 engineering. And then this is specialty resources where I'm not going to be able to get those for a while. This indicator up here is empire size. When your empire size exceeds 100, you start to suffer penalties for gaining new traditions and new research. So if you sprawl out very large, you start to slow down with your progression, and you can offset this with bureaucrats. Envoys, I'm not have really much use for at the moment, but normally they would either represent you in the galactic community, or spy, or create friendships or enemies with other factions. They're sort of your diplomats. This is the Empire population, which is the sum total of all the people on all worlds. So there's 28 people that started on Yoda Prime, represented there. Starbase capacity. How many starbases you can have You can exceed your maximum, but if you exceed your maximum, you start to get taxed pretty heavily. Same with naval capacity. So there's two things that determine how large your navies can be. Your naval capacity is the sum total of the amount of ships that you can have. And then there's fleet size, which is also, in this case, happens to be 20. You cannot max out beyond your fleet max, but you can go beyond your naval max. Your naval max, you start to get taxed heavily. Your fleet max is a hard cap. And the reason for that mechanic is to stop, like, death balls, basically putting all of your ships in one massive fleet and just bulldozing through. So there is a fleet max component there. On the left here, we have contacts to be able to contact all of the empires that we know of. So here is a little indicator that we are a vassal of the Overlord. And then they also have two other vassals. And I don't know their relative power because I would need to spy on them. So it's unavailable at this time. So I don't have a lot of information there. But it will fill out over time if I choose to build a spy network in their empires. We also now have agreements. So this is new. An agreement is an agreement between you and your overlord, or you and your vassals. And it is sort of the contract that you build. As soon as I unpause, we'll be able to set up our first agreement. So I'm not going to cover this until then, which is very soon. The next is situation log. There is a significant change to situation logs in this version of Stellaris. Previously, situation logs were kind of hidden, but now they're actually going to take place in the outliner here. So, for instance, if you have a dramatic shortage of food, it's going to trigger a 6-month or 1-year situation that you have to address or suffer consequences. So, we'll see some of those as we play, but it's a really different system than it was before. And then in the situation log, you also have anomalies, which are things that your scientists can research and analyze. And then victory conditions. So here we are compared to all the other known empires in terms of victory. We're a 10th of X. I don't even know the max amount. Our Overlord is number 3, just south of the two fallen empires, which are most certainly number 1 and number 2. So they are basically the strongest active empire in the galaxy that at this time. The next is market, where you can exchange resources for market fees. So you could, for instance, sell off food for energy credits. So you sell anything for energy credits, and then you could buy anything with energy credits. So energy credits happen to be the universal currency. Planets and sectors I'll get into once I start colonizing, but this gives you an overview of the amount of sectors you have, what governors are there, what kind of output you have, deficits, etc. Expansion plan are something I basically never use because I play on very small galaxies, which means that it's very easy for me to find habitable planets. They are either next to me or they don't exist. But if you were in a massive, massive galaxy and you weren't really sure where to expand, this is where you would look. Policies. So some of these policies can't really be changed, but these policies can be changed once every 10 years. And they're very, very important. So, for instance, diplomatic stance right now is expansionist, which reduces the build cost of an outpost, which is going to be really important. Once I fully expand to my borders and can't go any further, I should probably take a different diplomatic stance because expansionist won't help me any further. And all of these policies will dictate how your empire interacts with the rest of the galaxy. So right now, for instance, we allow non-native species of our planet to be displaced. So if we get a bunch of refugees, I can tell them to get out. Or our trade policy, or here, economic policy here, is that we make an equal mix of consumer goods and alloys, which are the resources up here. You can either push more consumer goods or more alloys, depending on your needs. Cheers. All right, the next tab is edicts. Edicts work fairly differently than it was just a few patches ago, where you have an edict fund, which allows you to have certain edicts for free. So an edict is some sort of benefit that is permanent as long as it is toggled on, but you need the minimum amount of unity to enable it in the first place. So if I, for instance, had 14 unity, I could enable fortify the border, which allows me to build 2 more star bases and upgrade them at 50% increased speed. And because my Edict's funds is 20, I get this for free. It won't cost me any monthly Unity. If you go over your Edict fund maximum, you start to spend Unity per month to upkeep that Edict. This works very differently than previous, where previously it was just a straight max of like you can have 1 active Edict or 2 active Edicts. Now, it depends on your Edict fund and how much Unity you make, so that you can go way over your max if you want to, if it's necessary, so on and so forth. The next one is societal management. So these are traditions. They're very dramatic benefits to your empire, depending on what you pick, but picks are final. They can't be reversed, and then anytime you fill out a tradition tree, you get a big perk, which could provide a huge benefit. So for instance, likely one of the first ones I'm going to pick is Technological Ascendancy, which gives me a base 10% research speed forever. But I'll be allowing you all to vote on what traditions and ascension perks we pick. And then in this same tree, you have relics, which you can activate for benefits, and then they also have passive benefits. I know this is a lot of information. And some special things that you can do with artifacts from archaeology sites. And then there is a crisis. If we do choose to become the crisis, this crisis tab opens up, allowing you to terrorize the galaxy. Next is the ship designer. And this allows you to design the ships, and as soon as I unpause, I will be naming our first Corvette ship class after one of you all. You can have different sections of your ship and equip them with different shields and armor. I'll get into that more when we have more weapons to choose from. And your fleet manager. Your fleet manager allows you to manage the fleet that you have by adding ships to it, or splitting the fleets, or retrofitting them up to the most modern variety. Technology is interesting. It's actually different in Stellaris than other previous games. So when you have a new technology to research, what ends up happening is you get some random options. Normally you get 3 options, but the reason I have 4th option is one of the government civics I have, which is the technology civic, which can be found here, the technocracy, which gives +1 research alternative. And the way this works is you just get sort of a random smattering of choice with a caveat. Because our societal researcher has an expertise in New Worlds, there is a increased likelihood that he'll be offered New Worlds research. Same with propulsion, or whatever specialty that your researcher has. So you can influence it a little bit, and then you can also influence it by the research that you have gotten already. So if you start to focus on, let's say, psychic research, you'll get more psychic options as they unlock. Factions. I'm not going to cover this until we actually have factions. I don't have factions yet. We'll get factions in about, I don't know, let's say half an hour to an hour, so on and so forth. Claims. Claims is any territory that you have claimed that belongs to an enemy empire, allowing you to manage who you want to go to war with to claim what territories. Species. So these are all the species that are in my empire, and then you can toggle up here for all the species in the known galaxy. So for instance, there are 50 robots living in the known galaxy, and then 25 Alari, 45 Storm Riders of 2 different types, because they have a tiered, some sort of tiered, one is continental and one is ocean. And then Valmanax, there's 25 of as well, and they are plant-based. And then in your species, you can also set rights. So in the species tab, I can go, hey, for all of the Yoda species in my empire, I want to change their living standards. I want to say that rulers and specialists produce more research. Let's do that. Now, if you change this, it can't be changed for another 10 years. So there's a 10-year cooldown for changing most of the major options, like policies and species settings. Agent number 1, thank you for the raid. I am just starting, so you guys are in for a bit of a treat. I am covering all of the simple, basic game mechanics of Stellaris at the moment. And for some reason or other, my shout-out didn't actually work. I'll look to fix that in just a second. But welcome. Oh, and this is my mascot, Mr. Yoda. And then lastly, we have leaders. So ever since the last update, leaders now cost an upkeep of unity. So previously it was just energy credits and they were cheap and easy to have a whole lot of. And now it's a lot more expensive because it costs unity, and until you have a nice surplus of unity or you're generating a lot of unity, you're pretty limited in the amount of leaders that you can get. Alright, I have no idea why my shoutout commands aren't working. But it looks like Nightbot is totally down because none of the commands are working. Cool. That's great. So in terms of leaders, it could show you who are your current leaders and what they're doing. So for instance, our governor is a agrarian governor who's increasing the amount of foods that we get. And I could always hire new governor if I had enough unity for it, or scientists, admirals, or generals. But unlike previous versions, I highly advise you not to hire leaders early on unless it's absolutely necessary, because it's going to be expensive. Alright, so with all of that covered, there's a few other tabs down here. There's the hotkeys for your homeworlds, your military, your research, your researcher, and your construction ship. And then down here is some map settings, which change the way the maps look. So this is the default mode. This is like the political mode, where this is my overlord, these are the vassals, and this is me, so on and so forth. You can also do with opinion map mode. So green means they like you, red means they don't, so on and so forth. All right, let's get started. I haven't even unpaused yet. So first things first, I'm going to have my construction ship create a mining station here at Tentramoda. And that's going to cost me 75 of the 100 minerals that I have. My leader right now is Warlike and a Space Miner. So because he's a Space Miner, it means that he gets to make mining stations at reduced cost. And then I'm sending my survey ship to the northeast towards the border of my neighbors so that I can compete for their systems. If I can lock down Carenza and Hempra, it means that they're going to have a harder time jumping over my borders to start colonizing south of me. But I also want to start surveying south quickly as well. Another thing I want to do is to create... Well, I'm not going to make a Corvette just yet. So let's unpause but play slow. So here at the start, we are given the opportunity to specialize what kind of vassal we're going to become from our indolent overlord. So an indolent overlord heavily relies upon their vassals, rarely interested in much beyond their home systems. So they don't spread much, and they're very reliant on us vassals, so they can be overthrown. And I'm going to respond to him that we didn't really have much of a choice to be a vassal, did we? I do intend to rebel against our overlord here, who is a xenophilic, militaristic materialist. So I'm going to respond to him with basically, shove it, I don't like you. Now, in terms of what type of empire you can have, there's three choices. There is the military-focused, which is a bulwark. There is the research-focused, which is the Scholaria. And then the mining-focused, which is the Prospectoria. I am going to be picking the Scholarly. So the way this works is we convert to the Scholarium Specialist, where we are focused on research and technology, but at a suffered cost of smaller fleet sizes and taxes and the like. We will also receive a science ship and a scientist from their empire for free. So we have started converting to the Scholarium Specialization. So with that, if we take a look over here in the agreements, the Scholarium will have, once we are fully converted over, we will have 3 different levels and a loyalty system, and I'll explain this in greater detail once we have converted. But there are benefits to being a vassal from someone depending on how you want to research and grow. So I'm going to let our specialization finish, and then their brand new researcher here, I'm going to send down to Himpra to survey Himpra so that I can colonize Himpra 2 early on. I'm going to run a raffle right now, and it's going to Laura the Noob. Congrats, you are going to become our Corvette. Now you can tell the game to auto-generate designs, but they don't necessarily make smart designs. So it's really important that if you want to min-max your ships or design them intelligently, you turn off auto-generate designs. You can leave the auto-upgrade on. The auto-upgrade, what that does is, right now I have like coil guns 1 and lasers 1. If coil guns 2 or lasers 2 were available, it would automatically update the design to include the improved part, but it is not going to dramatically change your ship. So I usually feel it's safe to leave auto-upgrade on most of the time, but auto-generate designs, no. Don't do that unless you're very, very new and you don't know what you're doing. So in terms of the Corvette here, there are 3 different types of Corvettes. There's missile boats, interceptors, and picket ships. Missile boats have 1 missile and 1 gun. Interceptors have 3 guns, and picket ships have 1 point defense and 2 guns. I'm going to go with interceptor. The advantage of a missile boat, if you're wondering, is missiles can be longer range than guns, but generally speaking, in a fight, ships will just close to minimum distance. So the only way a missile boat would work is if you had so many missile boats, you could take out your target before they could even get close enough to shoot at you. And I'm definitely not going to be able to do that with Corvettes, because Corvettes have very short range. So you can have missile boat battleships, which is some of the largest class of ships, where you just hammer them with torpedoes at really long range and don't really take a lot of damage. But for Corvettes, that's not really all that feasible. So here is our Laura the Noob, and I'm going to delete our auto-generated design, which means I have to retrofit for 3 alloys the ships that we have from the Rhadamant to Laura the Noob.
Fleets enhanced.
Which is done. So this is a Laura the Noob ship. Great. At this moment, it looks like I have a deficit of consumer goods. So I have 98 consumer goods with a deficit of -1, which means that it would take 98 months for me to basically hit 0. It's actually not 1, it's -1.8, so it's more like 45 or 50 months until I hit 0. Now, in order to fix this, there's a few different things that we could do, but the most obvious would be to build civilian industries. So what a civilian industry does, and what all buildings do, generally speaking, is they take one resource and turn it into another resource. So you have admin offices, for instance, that takes energy and turns it into unity. And they take energy and consumer goods and turn it into unity. Or an ally forge, which takes minerals and turns it into alloys. Alloys are used mostly to build space stations and ships. Minerals are used to build buildings, so you can forge the minerals into alloys. Autocathon monuments take a building slot and turns it into unity, so on and so forth. So for us to generate more consumer goods, we could build a civilian industries once we have the minerals for it, which takes a little bit of energy upkeep to run, and minerals and turns them into consumer goods, which keeps our populace happy. The reason I started running into the negative here is I changed the species over here from decent conditions, which is a 1 upkeep for rulers, a 0.5 upkeep for specialists, a 0.25 for workers, to academic privilege. 1 for rulers, 1 for specialists, 0.25 for workers. So what that means is that the 2 researchers that I had started using up more consumer goods to produce about 10% more research and also gain happiness. So I should talk about happiness briefly. Happiness works the way stability does. So the way it works is you can be as happy as the maximum of your habitability. So on your home planet, it's always going to be fully habitable, I think, is mostly true. Meaning that there is no max to happiness. You can go all the way up to 100%. And the happier your people become, the more benefits you have. So because my people have a relatively high approval rating, I'm getting 6% more resources for specialist jobs. The trade value goes up 6%. The immigration pool goes up 4%. As your happiness increases, the benefits grow. If your happiness decreases, you can have revolts, rebellions, or crime. So this here is crime. Right now, I have a crime of 0 because my governor has a skill which reduces it by 3, and then people are employed. Crime goes up when they're unhappy, when they're unemployed, or when you have corrupt governors. The other indicators here is housing. I have 8 free houses, so there's plenty of housing, there's no homelessness. That also drives up crime. I only have 1 available job, so I'm going to be looking to add jobs to Yoda Prime pretty soon, because after my population grows by 1, I will not have any open jobs, and this here is current unemployment, which is 0, but it's going to be going up soon unless I add jobs to this planet. And then this last tab is amenities. Amenities you can think of as just like happiness. And right now, the happiness is decent, but I could drive this up by providing more amenities to my population. And in order to do that, I would build something like a holo theater. Whoa, okay, share. Where it adds entertainers to our planet that keep people more entertained and happier. So the first 2 buildings that I'm likely to build on Yoda Prime are the civilian industries to address the deficit of consumer goods, and a holo theater to address the deficit of amenities. I could also convert any previous buildings over to those, rather than using up the building slots, but you have a finite amount of building slots, so you have to use them wisely. You gain building slots by increasing the size of your capital or building more districts. And there's a few other ways to get more building slots through research, but I'll cover those when we get there. So the first building that I would replace on Yoda Prime would be probably the commercial zone. So all the commercial zone right now is doing is producing trade goods. Trade value, if we look at the policies over here, trade value right now is just earning us energy credits. So it's just a complicated way of earning a bit more energy, where I could do that instead by building additional generators. Okay, over here we have a proposal by the honor-bound warriors, the Prince Electorate of the Valmanaxians, for a research agreement. The research agreement would be an agreement that we share research between both empires. As a rule in this series, although I don't have it written, I am not going to do any diplomacy with my overlord or his vassals. I'm basically going to ignore them trying to break away as fast as I can. So I'm going to ignore that. You can either right-click to decline it, or just ignore it until it times out. I'm just going to ignore it until it times out. If you have any questions in the chat, feel free to ask them. I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. So again, this is embassies. Embassies help to build a relationship with the empire that you build an embassy with. And again, I'm not doing anything with my overlord or his vassals, so no embassies either. Yeah, the objective and mission is to break out. Right now it's to explore potential expansion systems, but once I've fully explored, it's going to be getting out from under the thumb of my overlord. I don't want to be a vassal any longer.
Incoming transmission.
And they're going to keep offering proposals, and I'm just going to keep ignoring them. Hey, look at that. The Nightbot decided to work now. So, Agent number 1. Here's the shout out, long overdue. There it goes. You were also playing Stellaris. So, tell me about your playthrough. Mine is, I'm pretty sure I just covered it, so you all know that I'm a research vassal trying to break out from my overlord, and we're only 4 months in.
Anomaly detected.
So anomalies. Anomalies are special research things that can occur when you survey for the first time. So this anomaly has unusual energy readings. Now, for me, I feel like it's way more important for me to push ahead with surveying, so I'm not going to spend the 180 days to research this anomaly. I'm going to leave it for now. That also brings me to leaders. So I have a bunch of leaders here that need names. So let's get that going. First one, the True Jericho. You are going to be my governor. Next, we've got Tenoring. You're going to be the scientist loaned to me by my overlord. Taisato, you'll be the surveying scientist. Fogel 6, you are my engineering scientist. Joint, you are the societal researcher. And last but not least, I am Nick the Good. You are my physics researcher. Congrats. So Himpra is going to take a little while to survey, because there's 8 things to survey here. And then over at Carenza, there is like 9 things to survey, so it's also going to take a while. The construction online was an indicator that my construction ship back in my homeworld of Yoda just finished building the mineral station. So the next thing I want to do is to build the research station that's just northwest of the mineral station I just set up. And we have fully converted into the Stellarium. So if we take a look here, this is the current negotiation. So I'm a level 1 Stellarium. It means that I have a benefit to monthly scientific research of 20%, and I get 1 additional research alternative, so I have a lot of options as to what I want to research. The penalty is that my naval capacity goes down 30%, the military ships cost and upkeep go up 30%. So it's more expensive for me to keep a military, and I have a smaller military, but I get more research benefits. And then the individual benefits here is that sometimes when I survey things, I can yield a cache of physics, engineering, and societal research. This is additional monthly scientific research. This is additional researcher output. And this is the chance for research caches go up. And the way this works is as I become more loyal to my overlord, I level up to gain more additional benefits from being a Stellarium. The thing is, I don't plan on pushing that relationship very hard. And then in terms of contributions to the overlord, I don't owe them any energy credits, minerals, or food, alloys, or consumer goods, or any strategic resources, but they do take 30% of my research off the top. So essentially what's happening is I owe them research. I do almost a third of my research goes directly to my overlord. And then they also have the ability to build holdings in my territory. And they are building a overlord garrison, which is going to, I think, increase loyalty. And I have no control over what they build in my territory. Much the way that you get with a commercial pact. And we'll go over that if I get a commercial pact later on. So that is sort of the deal with the Stellarium. The other 2 vassals of his haven't specialized yet. And then there's also the terms of negotiation. So you can change the terms of your subjugation, your vassalage. Right now, I have to wait 55 months to change that. But what I could do is I could change these terms so that, let's say, I don't allow holdings, or I have independent diplomacy and I can vote however I want, so on and so forth. Or alternatively, change the type of specialty from Stellarium to Bulwark or Prospectorium or just a regular old vassal. But because it's on cooldown, I can't alter any of the changes of this agreement. Not yet. 30% off the top is rough. Yeah, it is. Ooh, the Grunner. So, the Yoda... where did this happen? There is a specialized archaeological site here on this asteroid. The way these work is you can send a scientist to excavate an archaeological site, provided it's within the territory of your empire, which Carenza is not yet. I have not annexed it, but I will once I have the influence to do so. So you can see researchers coming from this system and potentially this system to sort of annex this stuff, and it looks like nothing connects to this star. So I'm going to aim to get here, if I can, as fast as I can, to cut off the expansion of this Prince Electorate of the Valmex-Naxians, or whatever they are called. As fast as I can expand my border towards them limits the amount of potential expansion they can do against me. So, time is of the essence. However, unlike not being a vassal, it is a lot more expensive to build and expand as a vassal. You're penalized. Alright, first contact protocol, and I'm going to have you all vote on this. So the way this works is when we contact new civilizations, ones that we have never met before, what sort of stance are we going to have? There is the we shall greet the Xeno with open arms, which allows us to discover new contacts more quickly, and it also means that we can't attack neutral entities, but it also means that it might be easier for them to establish spy networks against us. There is the cautious stance, which increases the difficulty of contacting them, but also increases the difficulty that they can use espionage against us. And then, thirdly, there is the aggressive, which allows us to attack neutral entities who we have not yet contacted, allowing us to basically shoot at Xenos before we even know who they are. Now, I will say that in Stellaris, the AI doesn't really use espionage, so there is not really a penalty to picking opening up Xenos with open arms, but we are role-playing. And we're role-playing a phonetically egalitarian materialist, and you can just vote however you want. Nothing here needs to be meta, I guess. All right. Looks, I'm just going to call this early. Looks like we're going to be cautious.
Anomaly detected.
Alright, so here is yet another anomaly. I'm going to be ignoring anomalies until there's more or less nothing left to survey. It's more important that my scientists are surveying than it is for them to be analyzing anomalies, in my opinion. At least with the galaxy settings that I have, which is a very limited amount of space to expand into.
Construction online.
So that there is an engineering research station, which generates 2.4 engineering research per month. And the last station here is Nagrama, which makes energy credits. And then I'm going to have that, and I'm holding left shift here. Once the construction ship is done building that last mining station for the energy credits, I'm holding left shift to tell them to move to Carenza, because that's where I'm going to be headed next, in order to try to annex Carenza into my territory. So some other things to look at. Another one is the situation log. So, because my empire is set up as a democracy, every 10 years, a new election is held for a new ruler. What this means is that the ruler then has some sort of edict that they'll claim. They'll say, hey, in my 10 years as a leader, I'm going to promise to fulfill something, and if you do, you build up unity fulfilling it. So energy economics is what he has promised, which means that if at the end of his tenure of 10 years, which is going to happen in about 9 years from now, if I have at least 20 positive energy credits per month, I will make 6 months worth of unity. I've already met that. But a lot of the times, their promises will be that they'll add like 2 agricultural districts or 2 mining districts or set up like 4 research stations or something. So when you're trying to maximize the amount of unity that you have, it's really important that you consider the political promises that your leader has made. And Sine Curve, thank you for the resub. Same with you, Fameface and Cowley and Rusty Rhino. And welcome. You've been watching Stellaris Overlord, which originally streamed live on Twitch May 17th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to all my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel. I'll catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, everybody.